On this week's episode of Be More Super, the podcast, I'm really excited. This is the second guest I've had from this awesome show. That show being Snowpiercer on Netflix. And I'm not actually sure what it's shown on in the US, but I'm sure I'll find out. It's, of course, Tom Lipinski. Tom, welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks so much for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be.
Oh, it's my pleasure, because I tell you what, Snowpiercer, season 1 was fantastic, but season 2, it's on another level. So I'm going to ask you a few questions about your wonderful part in that. But, how is everything during the pandemic, during, the last year? How has that affected you and work and home?
Yeah, well, we were actually, we were shooting season 2 when the pandemic sort of struck the States and, Canada, obviously. Some of the first cases were over in Washington State, so not very far from here. And I remember I was en route to set when the Teamster got the call, said, turn him around, send him back to send him back to his hotel, tell him to pack his bags and get out of here. So it was, in a way, the pandemic is all connected to Snowpiercer and will forever be connected in my mind for that reason. But it's been a slog. I think it's been a slog for everybody.
Definitely. I'm sorry.
No, it's I remember I came back to New York, and I have a baby with my wife, and we weren't there for but a couple days before we realized we got to get out of here too. So we went up to my mother's, and it's really taking it day by day, which is it's scary, but it's also it's what we're all dealing with.
Yeah, I know. I always say it is what it is. We've just got to persevere. It's affected, I think, everyone. There are strange people out there that think it's still a hoax, that it's not real, which I just do not understand whatsoever. We all know someone that's had it or been affected by it.
No, it's true, and I think I was talking with a friend of mine last night, and it's maybe a little bit tongue in cheek, but sort of said how we feel like the idea of being an actor, where so much of your life and employment is surrounded by mystery and unknowing the future, such that we were a little bit more adept at being able to say, like, all right, well, we just got to take it step by step and day by day, not knowing what the future holds. And I just think a lot of people are really uncomfortable with uncertainty. And that's sort of what it boils down to, an unwillingness to accept uncertainty,
Yeah, of course. So let's talk about your acting. Let's give all the viewers and the listeners a bit of escape for a short time to get away from the crazy world that we're in at the moment. So you are a working actor. I have read on the internet, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because the internet is absolutely hilarious for facts and figures. The first thing I found out about you was you're of decent height. There was something on the internet, and it just said Tom is of decent height. But there was something there that said about you before you got into the industry. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your father, who's a doctor, wanted you to get into medicine. So there was going to be a chance that you wasn't going to be an actor.
Yeah, my father was a doctor. He passed away a few years ago, but I was supposed to be a third generation physician. That was most certainly the plan for me from the very beginning. I even went to college and was a pre-med major, but for a moment in time. I think I never liked science. I was never any good at my science or math classes. So I always was sort of in the back of my mind realizing I hope my father will someday accept the fact that it doesn't seem like this is going to work for me.
But the great thing is being an actor, you could play a doctor. You could play a fireman. You could do whatever you want. So what inspired you to actually get into acting? What was it about the profession that really attracted you?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I feel like everybody has or maybe over time has developed their story of how they fell into it. They put on little plays for their parents when they were kids, or they remember seeing a movie or a play that just spurred them into pursuing it. And I think the truth of it is, for me, there was never one real moment or sort of turning point or anything like that. It was just something that I took a class my senior year. I was a history major, and I needed a class to fill out the semester that didn't have a lot of reading, because I just needed sort of, a gut course, or what I thought was going to be an easy course. And I took an acting class, and just at that time, really, really enjoyed it, having no understanding. I had never entertained the idea of being an actor or even thought of the theater. I'd never been to a play before I ended up being cast in one in college. So it was just a serendipitous thing that I just, for whatever reason, continued to slowly keep doing, and getting into plays. And I got into a play right as I graduated from college, and then those people hooked me up with another theater group who was moving to New York, and then I moved to New York, and one thing leads to another, and here I am, having been doing it for 15 years.
Definitely. Can you remember your first ever audition?
For TV, or for like first ever audition of all time?
First ever audition of all time.
Yeah. I think I do, and it was an atrociously embarrassing one. It was in college. I was auditioning for a play called Anna in the Tropics by Nilo Cruz. And I had the material, and I was stiff as a board. I was up on a stage, a big proscenium stage with a huge audience. Nobody was there except for, the director and the producer, I guess. But I was stiff as a board, so incredibly nervous. And then I finished the material, and they said, "Can you sing us a song?" And it caught me so completely by surprise. I had had no song that came to mind. So they just said, "Sing Happy Birthday." So I sang Happy Birthday and skulked off stage.
That is so much better than mine. My first ever audition at school, so high school, was for Grease, and I got on stage, and I suffered with a very bad stutter when I was younger. I had speech therapy for about 7-8 years, really, really bad.
Wow.
And I remember going on stage and closing my eyes because I was so embarrassed, and I sung Crazy Nights by Kiss. And literally, it was the only song that I knew, and I even pretended to do the air guitar, and then I opened my eyes, and everyone was laughing, and I walked off stage. I got the part. I got the part of Sonny in Grease, and then I went into performing arts at college and did acting for a short time, and it actually helped my stutter. So this is the main reason why I'm doing this show, is to challenge myself, because if you haven't got a script, if you haven't got a song to sing, you've got to really concentrate on what you're saying. So occasionally I might stutter, so I do apologize.
No. So did you pursue the performing arts almost as a challenge to yourself?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I went to college. I did a few shows in the West End in London. I did a few films. I acted opposite Samantha Morton. And obviously I settled down and had kids and got a normal job. But yeah, I did. I did it to challenge myself, and it really helped. And if anything, it made me sound a lot posher through the elocution lessons, which is good. Which is good. So let's talk Snowpiercer. because it took the world by storm. It was that good. It got commissioned for a second season before it came out. So it was that good. So you play Kevin in the show. How did you get the part, and what was the audition process like for Snowpiercer?
Yeah, so I'm sure you're familiar with this, but this was before the pandemic, obviously, and I would say it's been increasing over the years, and now it's almost completely taken over. But I get a lot of self tapes, where they send you the audition material, and then you just sort of have to put yourself on tape at your own time. And I had just had a baby with my wife, and so finding the free time to put yourself on tape and to audition, and certainly to enlist my wife's help, as she would sometimes help me to audition with material, was getting increasingly difficult. And so it was in New York, my apartment there. It has a basement where I had set up sort of a camera and a backdrop and everything. And I did the audition by myself. I did the sides, imagining I was listening to somebody else off camera and just doing my material, which was a little odd to be acting by yourself. And then I gave 2 different takes, and I sent the material off, and it wasn't like, I want to say it was like a month later, they said, we'd love to have you join us up in Vancouver. And it took me completely by surprise.
That is awesome. And at that point, did you know what was going to become of Kevin?
I didn't. So I didn't. Yeah, exactly. And had I known, would I have agreed? Right. Sometimes you get a script and you get a sort of a whole character breakdown, and sometimes you just get the sides. I just gotten the sides for this particular scene, which was the scene where I'm eating chicken wings. So that was all I knew. And when I got the first 2 scripts, I thought, oh boy, I'm really in for it. I'm really in for it with this one.
Definitely. And I've got to say, I'm really disappointed you was in that position. I really am, because me and my wife really loved your character, because you showed so much vulnerability. The scenes where you're getting the fruit, and we just, we'll talk about that scene in a moment. But you play opposite Sean Bean. And Sean Bean is a local lad to me. He's from it's about 30 minutes drive from where I live. What was it like acting opposite Sean Bean? Because he's quite a he's quite a character.
He is, and I mean, I have to own up to the fact that when I was a kid, I remember watching Patriot games with my father. And I remember where we watched it. It was in the middle of winter, and we were up in New Hampshire for some reason. I'm originally from Massachusetts, but we were up in New Hampshire, and his like glowering face in that movie and his just dogged, murderous pursuit of Harrison Ford in that movie scared the hell out of me. I couldn't sleep after watching that movie, and I was terrified that the IRA was going to be knocking on my door. And so all of which is to say, playing opposite him, glowering back at me, was going to, really put me in my place and requires a little bit less acting, I think, of course, because you have a built-in sense, admiration and awe, and some of that already cooked into your interpersonal relationships. It was sort of like, all right, just sit across from him and hold on.
And did he stay in character once the camera stopped shooting? Is he quite a method actor? Does he like to walk around set as Mr. Wilford?
Not that I could tell. I think for each individual, their process can sort of be a little bit opaque, whether or not what they broadcast as their method versus what their actual method is versus how they're feeling at any given moment is always sort of a little bit of a mystery. But he was always very kind to me. You know, even in some of our more heightened scenes, the scene would end and we'd be, you know, chatting about the dog that was, you know, brought in the scene or something like that. So he's able to sort of let it drop away pretty easily, I think.
That's awesome. And obviously, the biggest scene for you was the scene with the bath. You know, how do you prepare for a scene like that? Because that scene was very heavy, and it really put Wilford's position, you know, to light. You know, his demeanor is very unhinged. How did you prepare for that? Because it was very moving and very sort of, you know, after the scene, me and my wife looked at each other and went, "What?" You know, we were like, "No, not Kev, not our Kev," and but how did you prepare for that? Because it was quite a, you know, a heavy scene.
It was a heavy scene, and you know, it's difficult to say because I think in one sense you prepare for a scene like that in the way that you would prepare for any other. You know, it's certainly the content of the scene is far heavier. You know, it's more macabre, and you have to sort of, in a sense, uh, reconcile yourself with sort of understanding what it would truly feel like to be in that position, to make that kind of decision, which is, you know, I think, which is a really wrenching place for anyone to be. But, you know, as far as how you prepare for it, I just think it's, you know, you lean on sort of the fundamentals of how you prepare for a scene anyway, and what he knows at any given time, how he feels about the given circumstance, how he feels about, you know, taking the attention off of myself and putting it on my acting partner, which I think for that scene especially, and for Kevin rather, in general, to be taking the attention off of himself and focusing on somebody else is sort of a linchpin, because he's so obsequious to Wilford, for lack of a better word. He's so dedicated to not only being in service of Wilford, but, you know, making sure that everything that he does makes Mr. Wilford happy. So it takes a little bit of the pressure off of Kevin, and maybe a little bit of the pressure off of myself as an actor, if I'm just able to completely focus all of my attention and my focus on him, because he really is the one who guides me through that scene. And if I can just be open to that, then I think hopefully at least it allowed that scene to sort of play out in a really, you know, somewhat predictable but awful direction.
Yeah, I've got to say that when the scene started and he you know, got you towards a bath and he was putting the stuff in the bath, and it was just, the tension was getting more and more. You thought something ain't going to be right. But we see you strip off and then get in the bath, and that uncomfortable moment where Sean or Mr. Wilford strips off as well, and you're thinking, oh, wow, okay, this is even more uncomfortable. And he gets in the bath. What was that like to film? I mean, again, I have never got naked in a scene or anywhere, thank goodness, because it would be illegal. But for you, how was that to film, you know, opposite? I presume you had something covering your bits, or was it a case of let it go free?
Yeah, no, you presume correctly. You know, everyone, when it comes to this sort of thing, when it comes to sort of nudity and that level of, you know, physical vulnerability, let's call it, generally speaking, most productions, and certainly on Snowpiercer, everyone takes, you know, great care in making sure you have everything that you need. And, you know, they laid out not just one, but a choice of G-strings for me to choose from to wear in the scene, which is just like, pick one. I don't want to be in the position of choosing a G-string, you know, which one really speaks to me as a G-string.
it makes it even more uncomfortable for you when you've got to choose a G-string.
It's not what I thought that I would be dealing with when I woke up that morning, I think. But yeah, it's funny because on the set, they have what's called a closed set. So generally a set, you got a million people walking around constantly fussing with things, fussing with lights, fussing with everything else. But on a closed set, they really make a concerted effort to only have the actors and maybe the director, cinematographer, maybe a couple of people coming in and out. But what that also meant in practice was then you have two grown men who are standing around naked together. And so, on a couple of occasions, because we shot it from, I want to say like 4 or 5 different angles, and it took half the day. What that meant in practice was that Sean Bean and I were sitting more or less nude in a rather small tub together for extended periods of time as they fixed the lights from outside, and we're sort of alone in there. With, it's odd.
What do you talk about, when you're in a bath with Sean for half the day?
Right. Because you don't, and that was a difficult thing for me to navigate as well, because it was like, how do you start that conversation? Do you think, I loved you in Patriot games, by the way. That's not the first volley you want to have in a tub with a gentleman. So it was really, from what I remember, it was really just like, so, crazy scene. It's like, yeah. And that was more or less sort of the tone and the tenor of the entire afternoon, where we're both sort of trying to stay somewhat in the realm of, the scene and not getting too carried away. But yeah, no escaping the awkwardness of that.
But such a good scene, and it seems like such a great bunch of people, the cast, and it seems like a massive family on set. I mean, I had Alex Ponovic on the show a while ago that plays Boki,
Okay.
and he was saying that how everyone is just so connected, and it's such a good laugh when you're on set. I mean, did you have the same experience? Did you really enjoy being surrounded by all those wonderful actors?
Yeah, totally. I'm also somebody who I love being on a set. Being on a set is just such a treat for me. I would be there all day, even if I didn't, if I had one tiny little walk on, walk off scene, I would just like to hang around, because I just find the energy and the creative spirit of being on a set really invigorating and really fun. But yeah, I mean, this show in particular, a lot of TV shows, you have to do exteriors and you're sort of traveling around and people can sort of get spread out. But this all takes place on a train, right? And so we're on the stages every day. So it's really just like showing up to the office. And there are so many fabulous, different, varied characters on this that you're always seeing somebody new. I've become fast friends. I knew a couple of people from before, from just being in New York. But yeah, I mean, that's the other benefit, I think, of acting, as I've found throughout my career, is it's very easy to drop in and become fast friends with people.
Yeah.
And on a show that is has such tight quarters as this, and has so many fascinating, fun characters, it just makes that process even easier. So it's a really great team and really fun people, and I've enjoyed myself immensely.
And you mentioned Close Quarters, and you mentioned earlier that it was filmed during the start of the pandemic. How did you manage all the precautions if it was such a close set? Did you have to quarantine for a certain amount of time before filming?
Yeah, so that's part of it. When we came back to finish the second season, because we were cut short, we were abbreviated, and then we all had to come back. And so, yeah, we had to land, and then we had to quarantine for 14 days. And then you all have to go through rapid testing, I think every 2 to 3 days. And the production was fantastic. They have to bring in all sorts of specialists, and they obviously, you can't have crafty in the way that it was. So you have all these different
Yeah.
protocols that have to be put in place. So it gets a lot more complicated. And in a sense, it's sad because that feeling of closeness and companionship and being sort of all scrunched together, where once that was, sort of sweet and heartwarming, is now sort of like viewed as a threat. Um, and it's weird because you all have to arrive on set masked, and then once you get the go ahead, then you take your mask off, and in pretty short order, to be in close proximity to other people without a mask on, feels dangerous, and feels there's like this frisson of excitement where you're just close to other people.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know if that adds or takes away from the ultimate product, but I wonder if it will be noticeable in some of these shows that are coming out now, that you could tell they were filmed under lockdown,
Yeah, yeah. So I presume there wasn't any Tom Cruise moments on set.
No, not that I recall, not that I was present for. I think, but it was funny. I remember listening to that blow up, and there's a part of you that gets it, right?
Mm,
There's
yeah.
a part of you that it's like, all it takes is one jerk to really screw things up for everybody, and not just like screw things up. I mean, like, put people in danger.
Yeah.
Because there's really no predicting. So, while it was maybe a little bit overcooked, I can certainly understand the.
It is Tom Cruise, and to be honest,
He does what he wants.
I completely agree with him. To be fair, I thought it was
Yeah.
just justified. Maybe, yeah, you're right. It's a bit over the top, but he's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders. He's got to pay. He's got to keep crew, actors all employed to feed their families, pay more mortgages and everything like that. So, but I'm glad that everything was fine on the Snowpiercer. I'm glad that you had your chance to take your mask off and be free and feel that danger. So talking about danger, have you kept anything from the set of Snowpiercer? Did you take any mementos?
Ooh, interesting. There's a part of me, obviously, that in the back of my mind thinks, well, surely that custom-made three-piece teal suit won't get put to use on anybody else because it was custom built for me. So,
Yeah.
Should the end of that show arise, perhaps I should reach out to wardrobe and ask, what would it take? I don't think that I took anything from the set. I feel like I got a Snowpiercer hat, a little, like knit hat, which was, I think, for cast and crew. So I wear that proudly around the house. But I didn't. It's funny. There's not a lot that I could take from that set because of the circumstances. Everything's sort of well bolted down because it's on a train, right? But
but thing is, though, you died, and I think like a retirement present, they should give, if someone dies on a show, they should give that person a gift. Thank you so much for your service, and
for your service, like a little mini tombstone, or maybe they give me the blade that I was, the
yes,
fake blade that I held to my wrist, and it was a shame because they had just a fantastic special effects team come in for that day, because they were going to do a gag where they were going to do an insert and show me dragging the blade over my arm and having the blood sort of come out under the water. And we did a screen test for it, and it looked fantastic. I mean, they made this whole mock-up that covered my arm, and then I was going to drag it, and it looked just incredible. And we were running out of time on the day, and when we did it, my arm was under the water, and everything was loaded, and they have this sort of like invisible hose that came out of the tub and was attached to this thing that was going to pump the blood in and through, and it was going to come out. And there was a kink in the tube, and it just squirted and you could tell that it was not coming out of my arm. It was coming out from somewhere else in the bathtub, and it just didn't work. And then we couldn't reset it. We couldn't reset the water, and it was such a shame. It ended up, in my mind, I was, as an actor, I was fortunate because they left the camera on me because I don't think they had a choice on where else to go.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it played well that way. But I just remember being shocked at the things that, we forget sort of the magic that a lot of the craft people on set can come up with. I mean, the special effects teams, the things that they can do now, forget CGI, the things that they can do in camera is unbelievable.
It really definitely
is.
And nothing will ever replace practical effects. And I think the great thing about Snowpiercer is that it's very grounded. It's not full of special effects. Yeah, on the outside when you see it going through the world, obviously they can't do that for real because the world's not like that yet. Just a few years time, and also do my research as well. Mickey Sumner, that is in the show. Her dad's Sting. I didn't realize that. And I was like, wow. So I hope that you've made friends with her. And
I have made friends with her. She's actually dear friends with another friend of mine, and I had met her because she's been in a million movies and she's been around the scene, and knew her in New York. Couldn't be a sweeter girl. And she's having, I think that she's having fun with her role, even though her role is a heavy lift emotionally. She's always Till is always seemingly in a bad place one way or another. So I think she's in it. She's in it.
She certainly is. Yeah. And Tom, I can't get you on this show without mentioning another amazing thing that you've been involved with, which is Don't Worry, Baby. So Don't Worry, Baby. I saw a couple of years ago, and it's popped up on Amazon Prime. So I put it on again because it's just an awesome movie. It really, really is. And your character Lenny, I just think it's fantastic. Slightly obsessed with porn, but a wonderful film. What was it like playing Lenny? Because the story basically is a young man sleeps with this girl, and then his dad sleeps with her afterwards, and obviously she has a child, and they don't know who's the father. And you're the wonderful friend, housemate that is slightly obsessed with porn and has amazing comic timing.
Yeah, that's so funny. I love that movie. I had so much fun doing that because, up until that point, it was written and directed by this guy, Julian Branciforte, who was just awesome. A great young kid. I think it was his first feature. All the producers, they were young guys, and it was a real treat to make it. But up until that point, I had really been stuck being the bad guy for whatever reason. I guess people maybe start out in their careers conceiving of themselves and how they think they'll be cast. I don't know if you had this feeling. You were like, I see myself a certain way, and I think certain roles I would be good in, I'd be cast in. I sort of always thought of myself more as a Lenny, more as sort of a, I don't want to say a sidekick, but someone who is just a little bit odd, funny, sort of oddball, don't really quite know where he's coming from kind of character. And all of a sudden I would just get cast as being a killer or somebody with a secret or somebody who was otherwise, ill-intended. Let's put it that way. So to get that role, I really felt like released and freed to have an enormous amount of fun playing with sort of being somebody who's not, the pornography included, he doesn't seem to be bound by any sort of social mores or expectations in any way. And so you can sort of, that it's just it was a fun feeling to just sort of be like, well, just do whatever I want, because that's what Lenny would do, you know?
And it's a great movie because it keeps you guessing all the way through.
Right.
You don't know what's going to happen, and obviously it ends beautifully. But I've got to say, the scene with you in his dad's house, and he's telling you to get out, and then all of a sudden the camera goes on you, and you're there with I think a glass of wine and a sandwich, and you've just made yourself at home. I just thought it was hilarious. You didn't have to say anything, and it was funny as hell. So looking back to when you started as an actor in the industry to now, what would you say are the ups and downs of being an actor? At the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's, boy, when I started, when I first moved to New York, I was in theater. And I say theater, and people imagine like, oh, Broadway or maybe off Broadway, but it was most certainly not that. I was doing like experimental theater, well off Broadway. And the first play I did in New York was a kabuki version of Major Barbara, which one can imagine it was interesting, to say the least. But the life of an actor, unless you're extremely, extremely fortunate, is an incredibly challenging one, because it's one that's, you fight with a sense of self-worth, and you trying not to allow getting a job be the thing that gives you a sense of validation, right? Being the only thing that can tell you that you're a good actor, or that acting is worthwhile, or it's something that you should choose to do for a living. So, the evolution that I've had as an actor really sort of obviously runs in cycles, and always comes back to like needing to continually make the decision and understand and try to investigate if it's something that continues to excite you, that you continue to learn from, that you continue to enjoy. Like I said, being on a set, working with people with in different functions, from camera people, directors, producers. That for me is still the ultimate sort of like team project environment. Under pressure, need to get shots, everyone's sort of playing their own role. That for me still remains incredibly exciting. But make no mistake, I have been very fortunate in the jobs I've gotten. It's never been easy, and every time you get a job, there's a sense of elation, but it's shortly followed by, I'm gonna have to get another one after this one's over.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, because obviously now you've got a little one, you've got a small human. What sort of pressure? Has the pressure got a lot bigger now? Because obviously, you've not only got your other half, but you've now got a child. For an actor, as you say, you've finished a job, you've got to get another one.
Right.
Is that put a lot more pressure on you?
Of course, yeah. And I mean, the feeling of pressure is ever present, and it's always changing. I thought I understood what it was to be under pressure to get a job once I rented my first apartment, and wasn't in like a shared apartment with a bunch of other idiots. And I thought that's what pressure was. And then I knew what pressure was when I was just an actor alone, and I didn't have a day job, or I didn't have anything else. So, the reality is you're always under pressure. You're always under an enormous amount of pressure. And that feeling really never goes away. And I think the mistake that a young actor makes, the mistake that I made, was thinking that there will be some point where that pressure won't be there, you know, or that I just need to reach a critical mass of roles or of money or of you know, whatever, where you know, the things that I wake up with and we all deal with every day just won't be as present. But it's, you know, I think that's the mistake, which is no, you just have to make peace with and deal with all of these things, because, you know, it never goes away. And I, you know, for people who aren't actors, I think they imagine, or actually, I don't exactly quite know what they imagine an actor's life to be. Maybe they think it's sort of enchanted and we all go out to brunch and, you know, we just sort of lay about and then make a ton of money. But it's, you know, it's a job like any other.
Wait a second,
You know?
you're telling me that you don't all go to the Olive Garden and drive Lamborghinis?
Well, you know, I do have a Lamborghini. That's true. Yeah, look, you know, it's certainly, I get a kick out of the asymmetry of the actor's lifestyle. I think it's unique, weird, and it's nothing that I could have imagined growing up. I grew up in a pretty, you know, normal suburb of Boston, you know, where the idea of being in the arts, let alone being an actor, was so far outside the realm of possibility. I couldn't even understand what it was. But, you know, I feel very fortunate to do what I do and to live the life that I'm living, but also understanding that it's not some great escape from the challenges that everybody faces, of having to make a living, of having to learn, of having to get better, of having to, you know, move up and get a bigger, better job and make a little bit more money and, you know, sustain a family and do all these other sorts of things. I think maybe certain actors do a disservice to the job of acting by talking about, you know, traveling here and doing this and doing that, and, you know, I don't know. I think the job of a working actor is getting up every day and putting on, you know, giving a good audition and working hard and doing all those things that all the rest of us do, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I describe to friends that get really like sort of starstruck and everything like that, which is, you know, great. Do you know what I mean? You can look up to these actors, but, you know, like I always say, is that it's a job. They're doing a job. It's like where I disagree with the paparazzi, you know, chasing these stars. I just think, you know, some stars want it and then some obviously don't, and these paparazzi are just like hounds, and I just feel sorry for them, because at the end of the day, it's a job. They should be able to clock off at the end of the night, go home and have a normal life. And I wanted to mention the fact that, you know, your presence on social media is literally nil. Is that for a quiet life, or is it because you know, you don't believe in entering that realm?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because I think it's multifaceted, right? I mean, I think, to your point, you know, with paparazzi and stuff, I think a lot of people imagine, or if they ever hear an actor saying, you know, I don't want publicity, or I don't, you know, want all this sort of stuff, they just imagine that to be inherently disingenuous. They imagine that if you want to be an actor, you're doing it because you want attention. You do it because you want to be in a magazine, or because you want people to chase you down the street. And it's very hard to convince people that, though that may be true of some, it's not true of everyone. No. And I can speak for myself in saying that it's always funny to me, and I think it's I treat it as a real treat if somebody recognizes me on the street. I get very excited, and, you know, it's like, oh, it's like meeting an old friend, because they know you from a thing, and they have obviously an opinion about it, and I think that's great fun. But it always comes as a surprise to me, because when you're acting in a especially on a TV show, less so when you're, in front of an audience, there's a part of me, in my mind at least, that forgets the end result is going out to, millions of homes, right? You forget that you're going into these people's homes and then they're going to be experiencing your performance. It's really, for me, the enjoyment I get and the focus that I have is with these specific other actors and people and these moments that you collect, and then that's it. So this idea of like an outside world, like for example, when you reached out and set this interview, I thought, oh, right, the outside world. There's a public, you know what I mean? You could convince yourself that you're doing this only for the experience itself and that it's not meant to be shared. As for my social media, I guess it's a branch of that idea. I have never I was on Instagram and was on Facebook. I'd never really used them nor utilized them or found them to be particularly useful tools. I know a lot of people use them for advertising, to put their brand out, to engage in their work or whatever else. But I never was able to utilize them in that way. So then it just became about being in contact with people. And I found that when I would look at Instagram, and this is what we do as actors, right? We sort of like process our emotional life maybe as it's happening. I just realized that it was not a good experience for me because it brought out bad impulses. I wonder what that old ex-girlfriend is doing, or I wonder what that guy that I wonder what vacation that other person was going on, or wow, they look great, or wow, they look happy, or oh my God, that guy's rich, or whatever the case may be. And it just, there's no other way to put it, just brought out bad impulses. And for me in that sense, and I've been told by plenty of people, like, why aren't you on Instagram, man? Like you can get followers and you could make money by doing ads or whatever. It's not that I'm certainly not trying to be like holier than thou or some purist or something, and I'm not against making money, but I just found that whenever I engaged with it, I didn't feel good.
Right. Okay.
And
Yeah. The thing is, that's your choice, and I know plenty of other actors out there that feel exactly the same, because not only would you be inviting the good, but you'll be inviting the bad as well, because there are some unusual people out there that find pleasure out of just trolling. I mean, there are some really nice Instagram groups for you, which is quite nice. So there is for you, yeah. There's Tom _ Lipinski _fan page, which is the fan page of actor Tom Lipinski, and and you've got a lovely picture there. I'll put it up to the thingy. Don't worry, it's not embarrassing, because this might this is a good segue to my next question. You've got a picture there.
So funny.
Yeah. So my next question is, what's next for you? Because on there, there's something mentioning an upcoming short film with Tom, with Chris McGee. I don't know. That's who's posted it. I mean, what sort of things can we see you in coming up soon, or what you've been working on?
Yeah. So I'm currently in quarantine in Vancouver, on a job that I guess I am not at liberty to share at the moment.
Oh, do you know what? I love those questions. It's like, I'm doing something really good, but do you know what? I'm not going to tell you. And do you know what? It's fine. It's fine.
Honestly, I've as a consumer of media myself, I always wonder when I hear that too. I'm just like, oh, come on. Oh, really? Come on.
Yeah.
Why can't you tell? You're just being coy. You're just being, and until you get the email from producers, like in red caps, bold, like do not under any circumstances. And it was like, oh, I guess these people really mean it.
Yeah.
So I have to say, I never thought that I would be that guy who has to say I
Yeah.
can't tell you what I'm working on. But yeah, I'm up here on a show, and it will become clear soon.
Okay. Oh, I wish I could play like a game. Like, is it a well-known show? Does it begin with a B? You know, but
Yeah,
but no, I
it is
know what
well.
they're like. Sorry, what was that?
It is a well-known show.
Awesome, awesome. Okay,
Uh,
so if only you was on Instagram, you could let us all know.
I know, I know. If only,
Oh,
if
never.
only.